It starts with a machine that defies categories, light but ferocious, refined yet raw. You hear it before you see it, that tight metallic snarl that doesn't shout for attention so much as command it. It's a weapon tuned for precision, not spectacle. A motorcycle that turns the language of speed into something personal, almost surgical. Riders describe it less as a vehicle, and more as an extension of nerve and thought. Something that translates intent into motion faster than reason can follow. In an era obsessed with bigger engines and bolder claims, this machine quietly unseated giants by proving that mastery isn't measured in cubic centimeters but in connection. Every corner becomes a challenge issued and answered. Every straight, a question of trust. This is the kind of ride that makes you rethink what performance truly means, and what happens when a middleweight outsmarts the monsters built to crush it. If you want more deep dives into legends that change the game, like and subscribe, and drop a comment on which machine you want dissected next. The Triumph Street Triple. 765 RS didn't arrive by accident. It was born from an evolution that began when Triumph resurrected its naked sport line in the mid-2000s. The original Street Triple was a stripped-down, street-focused version of the Daytona sport bike, but by the time the 765 RS appeared, Triumph had rewritten the formula for what a middleweight should be. The goal was clear. Take the agility that made the early bikes beloved and fuse it with race-bred precision from the brand's Moto2 experience. Every decision, from the engine displacement to the geometry, was guided by the same question. How do you create a bike that feels faster not through brute power, but through intelligence? The 765 RS answered by leaning on balance. The three-cylinder engine offered a character that twin and four-cylinder rivals couldn't replicate. It revved with the urgency of a sport bike, yet delivered torque that made city riding effortless. Engineers didn't chase headline numbers. They pursued harmony, matching power with chassis feedback, throttle mapping with suspension feel. The result was a machine that could carve up a canyon road and commute through traffic without compromise. Design wasn't an afterthought either. The styling was all muscle and focus, with that distinctive twin headlight face hinting at aggression while maintaining a minimalist stance. Triumph wanted the 765 RS to be instantly recognizable, yet functionally refined, so every curve served airflow, weight distribution, or rider ergonomics. The aluminum twin-spar frame was a lesson in rigidity and weight optimization. Light enough to dance through bends, but sturdy enough to translate every flick of the bars into precise movement. It was a conscious balance of aggression and civility, a motorcycle that invited both experienced riders and those ready to step up from smaller machines. When you looked at the details, the Brembo M50 brakes, Öhlins STX40 rear shock, Showa big piston forks, you saw a pattern. Triumph gave middleweight riders components normally reserved for superbikes. This wasn't generosity. It was strategy. The company knew it couldn't win the horsepower war, so it decided to win the usability war. That meant electronics that felt organic rather than intrusive, like the quick shifter and 5 riding modes that adapted seamlessly to conditions. Even the TFT display was designed with intuitive simplicity in mind, bridging the gap between analog purity and digital precision. And yet, what truly set the 765 RS apart wasn't any one piece of hardware, it was the way it all came together. The bike didn't overwhelm. It invited. The clutch pull was light, the throttle response immediate but predictable, the handling so neutral it seemed to anticipate your next move. Owners often described it as telepathic, not because it read your thoughts, but because it rewarded trust. That trust was the essence of Triumph's design philosophy, confidence over intimidation. It reflected a cultural shift as well. Motorcycling in the late 2010s wasn't about chasing lap records, it was about versatility, daily enjoyment, and precision without punishment. The Street Triple 765 RS captured that ethos perfectly. It wasn't trying to mimic superbikes, it was trying to outthink them. And while that might sound like marketing bravado, the numbers told the story. The engine produced around 121 horsepower, not earth-shattering, but paired with a wet weight under 370 pounds. It delivered a power-to-weight ratio that made twisty roads its natural habitat. Triumph's engineers fine-tuned every parameter for responsiveness. The 765cc Triple was derived from their Moto2 program, where feedback and throttle connection matter more than peak power. This DNA made the RS a rider's bike, not just a fast one. For those stepping up from smaller displacements, the transition was fluid. The bike's ergonomics allowed comfort without dulling its edge. For veterans, it offered enough adjustability to tailor suspension, throttle, and braking behavior to taste. Triumph's decision to use premium hardware wasn't only about bragging rights, it ensured consistency. The Brembo brakes delivered superb feel at the lever, something many riders didn't realize they'd been missing until they tried it. The Öhlins shock absorbed road imperfections without dulling feedback, creating a rare harmony between control and comfort. These were the details that transformed the 765 RS from a fast bike into a complete one. In markets like the US, where long-distance commuting and weekend canyon runs coexist, that balance mattered. Triumph knew its buyers weren't all track junkies. They were enthusiasts who wanted a bike that felt alive at legal speeds. The Street Triple's gearing and torque spread made that possible, offering immediate acceleration from mid-range revs without needing to chase the red line. This made it engaging in the real world, not just on the spec sheet. Over the years, small updates refined the formula rather than reinvented it. Each generation tightening response, improving electronics, and shaving weight where it mattered. The 765 RS became the definitive version of that pursuit. What began as a modest evolution of a street fighter became a benchmark for middleweight precision. It bridged the gap between everyday usability and high-performance capability in a way that few motorcycles ever manage. To understand its significance, you have to look at what it didn't do. It didn't try to be a superbike. It didn't chase 200 horsepower insanity, and it didn't compromise comfort for the sake of bragging rights. Instead, it set a new expectation for what a middleweight should feel like. And that's where the real story begins, because as the Triumph Street 765 RS established its identity, it also began to reshape the way the industry and riders defined performance itself. Next, we'll see how that confidence challenged rivals, influenced racing, and redefined what kind of motorcycle could dominate both the road and the track. When the Triumph Street 765 RS began making its mark on the global scene, the industry was already bracing for a shift. Superbikes had reached a ceiling of excess, 200 horsepower missiles that looked incredible on paper, but punished most riders in reality. Into that climate rode the 765 RS, and it didn't shout to announce itself. It demonstrated. Early testers discovered that in the right hands, this middleweight could humiliate larger rivals on tight circuits, where agility and composure outweighed sheer power. Triumph's strategy was brilliant. Make a bike fast enough for the track, but forgiving enough for the street, and let riders find their confidence again. That's where the Street 765 RS found its audience. Not among thrill seekers chasing top speed, but among enthusiasts chasing precision. What separated it from competitors wasn't just equipment, it was execution. The combination of the 765cc triple engine's mid-range thrust, impeccable throttle mapping, and top-tier suspension made the RS feel organic, like the machine and rider were speaking the same language. In an era where electronics often numbed feedback, Triumph tuned its systems to amplify it. The traction control and ABS systems weren't blunt safety nets. They were subtle guardians, stepping in only when physics truly demanded. The quick shifter and auto blipper made every gear change feel like punctuation, not interruption. Triumph knew that if the rider could focus purely on the road or the track, confidence would translate into speed, and speed into loyalty. The 765 RS also became a darling of the aftermarket world. Because its fundamentals were so solid, tuners didn't have to fix anything. They could enhance everything. Lightweight exhausts, ECU flashes, and upgraded sprocket kits unlocked personality rather than performance, tailoring the experience to individual taste. Track day enthusiasts discovered that with minimal changes, slick tires, upgraded pads, and suspension tweaks, the RS could post lap times alongside leader-class bikes. That revelation rippled through the sport bike market. Riders began questioning whether they needed 200 horsepower when they could have 121 that they could actually use. The Street 765 RS sparked a conversation about what fast really means, forcing even the most power-obsessed manufacturers to reconsider their balance sheets and development goals. When Triumph's engine became the exclusive power plant for Moto2, the middleweight's credibility skyrocketed. Suddenly, the same displacement and core architecture found in the RS were powering the world's most competitive intermediate racing class. That connection wasn't marketing fluff, it was mechanical lineage. The RS's throttle response, torque delivery, and durability were directly influenced by racing demands. Riders felt it every time they rolled on the gas exiting a corner. It wasn't explosive, it was progressive. building power in a controllable wave that made every straight stretch feel longer than it was. The 765 RS also demonstrated a kind of mechanical honesty that resonated with seasoned riders. It didn't pretend to be anything else. It wasn't a touring bike in disguise or a stripped-down superbike. It was purpose-built to deliver clarity in the riding experience, and that purity became its identity. Critics often called it the thinking rider's sport bike, a compliment that stuck. Even as rivals tried to one-up it with more aggressive styling or inflated horsepower, Triumph's steady refinement kept the RS relevant. Each model year tweaked geometry, adjusted mapping, and lightened components, but never at the expense of that seamless connection between man and machine. On American roads, that connection became even more meaningful. The RS thrived in environments where control mattered: tight mountain passes, urban commutes, technical canyon roads. US riders began adopting it as an alternative to track-only supersports, appreciating how the 765 RS could deliver the same adrenaline without the fatigue. It also became a training ground for developing skill. Many riders learned to trust front-end feel, to trail brake, to dance on throttle and clutch, all on a bike that communicated every nuance of grip and motion. Triumph had built something that rewarded growth. It didn't flatter incompetence, but it didn't punish ambition either. That made it rare. And in the background, a quiet revolution was happening in design philosophy. The Street 765 RS blurred the line between categories. It wasn't just a naked sport bike anymore. It was a statement about focus. While other manufacturers kept layering on electronics and rider aids, Triumph kept refining the fundamentals: weight balance, throttle precision, mechanical feedback. The payoff was a motorcycle that felt timeless in a segment obsessed with upgrades. It also marked a turning point for Triumph as a company. The RS became their global performance ambassador, a model that represented British engineering confidence without arrogance. It sold respectably, but more importantly, it shaped perception. Dealers began reporting that riders who once overlooked Triumph were walking in to try the 765 RS, then leaving with grins and deposits down. The word spread through forums, track days, and YouTube reviews. It wasn't the flashiest bike, but it was the one you kept. Over time, its impact became measurable, not just in sales, but in influence. Competitors recalibrated their middleweight strategies, introducing models that borrowed Triumph's emphasis on balance and usability. Even superbikes started chasing smoother, torquey curves and lighter handling rather than sheer output. The ripple effect was profound. The Street 765 RS had done something few bikes ever achieve. It redefined expectations across an entire category. That's why, as we move to the next stage of the story, the question becomes not how Triumph built such a remarkable middleweight, but how it changed the perception of performance itself and what that legacy means for riders today. The Triumph Street 765 RS didn't just reshape the middleweight class, it reoriented what riders value in a performance machine. As time went on, the RS became a benchmark not only for Triumph, but for the industry's understanding of usable performance. What once sounded like a polite euphemism for "not that fast" became the very thing riders sought: the ability to exploit every bit of potential without fear or fatigue. In the Street 765 RS, that philosophy became tangible. The engine's perfect equilibrium of torque and rev range made it feel alive at every speed, and the chassis translated intent so precisely that many riders described it as intuitive rather than reactive. On track, it rewarded finesse. On the street, it rewarded rhythm. There's a reason instructors at advanced riding schools began using it as a teaching platform. It showed what good habits felt like. The feedback loop between throttle, tires, and suspension was immediate, teaching riders to trust themselves as much as the machine. And that might be the Street 765 RS's true legacy. It educated an entire generation of riders to appreciate precision over power. In the broader sense, it also helped Triumph reclaim its identity as a performance innovator. For decades, Triumph was seen through the lens of heritage: beautiful retros, rich history, polished chrome. The 765 RS proved that the same badge could lead the future of technical performance. It was the bridge between tradition and innovation, a machine that carried British motorcycling's soul into a modern, global market. Every refinement, from the slipper clutch to the lighter subframe, was rooted in the principle that better control equals better speed. The brilliance of the 765 RS is how it resisted excess. While rivals piled on horsepower, the RS doubled down on balance, and that decision aged beautifully. Even as electrification looms and stricter emissions rules reshape the sport bike landscape, the RS stands as an example of engineering restraint, the kind that delivers timeless performance instead of temporary supremacy. For owners, that's been a gift. Unlike many high-strung machines that demand constant vigilance, the Street 77765 RS ages gracefully. Its triple engine, if maintained properly, is known for reliability well past 30,000 miles. Its electronics are durable and simple to update, its components overbuilt for real-world use. It's the kind of motorcycle that still feels modern years after its debut because it wasn't built to chase trends, it was built to define them. Culturally, the RS also reshaped how riders talk about satisfaction. It wasn't about dominance or status, it was about the purity of interaction. Triumph captured that sense of authenticity at a time when many bikes were becoming more digital than visceral. The RS made riders feel like participants again, not passengers behind algorithms. It reminded the community that technology works best when it disappears. On a deeper level, it inspired a generation of builders and enthusiasts who saw in its simplicity an opportunity for expression. Track builds, minimalist customs, and endurance conversions all began with the 765 RS as a foundation. Triumph's choice to offer a high-spec model in an approachable package empowered that creativity. It brought performance ownership into reach without diluting the experience. And now, years after its introduction, the 765 RS has become a reference point, a measuring stick for balance, feel, and engagement. When new bikes launch, comparisons inevitably trace back to it. It's the yardstick by which riders' bikes are still judged. The question that remains is what comes next. As Triumph and the rest of the industry transition toward hybridization, lighter materials, and increasingly advanced electronics, the lesson of the Street 77765 RS will endure. Mechanical purity still matters. The essence of riding, connection, rhythm, feedback, can't be replicated by code alone. That's the truth the 765 RS proved on every ride, in every corner, for every rider willing to listen. It's more than a motorcycle. It's a manifesto written in aluminum and gasoline. And for all the changes ahead, that message will outlast the metal. Because once you've experienced a machine that feels this alive, everything else is just transportation. For riders in the US, the Triumph Street 77765 RS represents a rare alignment of practicality, performance, and passion. It's the kind of motorcycle that bridges dream and reality. The price, though premium for a middleweight, remains within reach for serious enthusiasts. On the used market, early examples have held their value remarkably well, partly because the build quality and engineering haven't dated, and partly because there's genuine demand from riders who missed it new. Maintenance is straightforward by performance bike standards. Valve checks are spaced reasonably, electronics are reliable, and the triple engine, if serviced with basic discipline, can handle years of hard use without drama. Insurance costs, while higher than average due to the RS badge, are offset by the bike's reputation for composure rather than recklessness. For American riders who split their time between city streets and open canyons, it delivers that perfect duality, comfortable enough for the daily grind, razor sharp when the weekend calls. The Triumph Street 77765 RS also fits a cultural sweet spot. It's exotic enough to feel special, yet familiar enough to live with. Unlike imported superbikes that demand perfect roads or constant attention, the RS forgives. It starts every time, runs on regular fuel, and never punishes you for not being on a racetrack. And when you do take it to a track day, it reminds you exactly why Triumph's engineering philosophy works. Everything about it feels earned. Buyers should look for bikes with documented service histories, as careful ownership matters more than mileage. Aftermarket parts are plentiful, but the stock setup remains one of the best balanced packages ever to roll off Triumph's production line. The biggest challenge today is finding one that hasn't been snatched up by a rider who intends to keep it indefinitely. Because once you've experienced that blend of torque, balance, and composure, it's hard to let it go. In a world chasing extremes, the Street 77765 RS stands as proof that intelligence can still outshine raw numbers. It's not just fast, it's thoughtful. It doesn't just thrill, it teaches. For American riders, it remains one of the smartest performance investments you can make. A motorcycle that will keep challenging your skills long after faster, flashier machines have come and gone. The Triumph Street 77765 RS isn't merely a middleweight success. It's the embodiment of balance done right, and that balance is its lasting power. In the story of modern motorcycling, It will always be the quiet genius that outsmarted the giants, and reminded everyone that the smartest way to win is to make the ride itself unforgettable.